So, haptic feedback in VR can vibrate your controller to improve the feel and the interaction of your game, giving you a sense that your hands are really touching something. And in this video, I'm going to show you how you can use them in two ways for the Meta Unity SDK. The first one will be the simple method with the OVRInput, and the other one will be the more complex one with the new Meta Haptic Studio. As always, the source code and some exclusive tutorials are available on my Patreon if you'd like to support my work. The link is in the description, but without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so we are inside Unity, and as you can see, this is the project that I made for the how to interact tutorial with the new Meta all-in-one SDK that you can find in the description. Now, anyway, let's see how we can trigger some haptic feedback, so some vibration on the controller with this project right there. So if I click on this cube, we make this cube grabbable with the hand tracking and with the controllers. And my goal will be to trigger an haptic feedback when we do so. So to do this, let's click on add component, and I'm going to create a new script which will be called trigger haptic on grab. There you go. Let's open the script in Visual Studio. And there you go. Let me show you the easy way to create some haptic feedbacks with the Meta SDK. So what we need actually is at the top two parameters, a public float called amplitude and another called frequency. Beautiful. And now I'm going to create a new function which will be called trigger haptics. Beautiful. And as a parameter on this function, I'm going to add a OVRInput.controllers that we can call controller, and that will be the controller that we want to do the vibration. Anyway, now simply with this, we can trigger a vibration on this controller by doing OVRInput.setControllerVibration. There you go. Now, as you can see, this function takes two parameters, the frequency and the amplitude that we added at the top. So let's do frequency and then amplitude. And finally, it needs a controllers to apply the vibration, which we can get with the controller parameter that we have. And there you go. Now simply with this trigger haptic function, we can trigger some vibration on the controller, but there is a little issue with this. The issue is that by default, the set controller vibration will have a length of 2.5 seconds, which is not something that we want in most cases. So for example, to have shorter vibrations in some cases. So what we can do actually is go at the top and add a public float duration parameters. Beautiful. And what we will do is actually, after the duration time has passed, we will kill the vibration with a frequency of 0. And to do so, we will use a coroutine. So I'm going to add a public void trigger haptics routine, which will have, as earlier, a controller parameters. But this time, this one will be a coroutine, which means that it will be a function that will goes over time. So here, instead of void, I want to add the I enumerator. Beautiful. And what I want to do is actually cut and paste here what we have written above. But afterward, what I can do is do yield return new wait for seconds and wait the duration seconds. And then afterward, what we can do is copy and paste this function again, but this time with a frequency and an amplitude of 0. So as you can see, it is the same as before. We are calling the set controller vibration with the frequency, the amplitude, and the controllers. But after a certain duration, we are killing the vibration by calling the same function with a frequency and an amplitude of 0. And now in the trigger haptic function, what we can do is simply do start coroutine and call the trigger haptics routine that we made with the same controllers parameter. Beautiful. And there you go. This is how you can make vibration on the controller with as parameter the frequency, the amplitude, but as well a duration. This is cool, but what's left is of course to call this function when we are grabbing the cube. So to do so, I'm going to add at the top a public grab interactable parameters that I can call grab interactable. Beautiful. As you can see, this is underlined in red because we have not added the correct namespace. If I click here, I can see that I need to write using oculus.interaction at the top, which can be done automatically if I just click here. As you can see, it has added the using oculus.interaction. And now the grab interactable parameter is recognized. Beautiful. And so what we can do is at the start of the game, we want to do grab interactable dot when selecting interactor added. So this means that a new interactor is grabbing this cube. And when we do so, we want to do dot action plus equals. And there, as you can see, we can autofill an action by pressing on the tab button. So if I press on tab right now, what this will do is create a function like this, which will have as a parameter a grab interactor, and it will assign this function for the action of the grab interactable. And there you go. Now what we can do is instead of this, we can simply trigger the haptics. But the issue is that right now what's missing is to know which controller is grabbing the cube. So to do so, I'm going to do a controller ref, call controller ref equal, and as you can see, this is underlined in red as well, because if I click here, as you can see, I need to write using oculus.interaction.input at the top. There you go. Now it has been added by default, as you can see, and now it is recognized. And what we can do is do obj.getComponent of type controller ref. So in just a few words, if we go back to Unity for a second, and if I go on the OVR camera rig interaction, we can see down below, if I go under the right controller, for example, then on the controller interactor, we can see here the controller grab interactor, which is responsible to grab stuff. And this is actually here the grab interactor that we can get here with this function. So with these parameters, when the action is called with this parameter. So what I'm trying to get is actually this controller ref component over there, which will give me the correct controller grabbing the cube. So what I can do now is if we get actually a controller ref, if the controller ref dot endedness is equals to right, what we can do is trigger the haptics with OVRInput controller.rTouch. And if it's left, we can do the same. So let's copy and paste this function, but this time with the L touch, which means the left controllers. And there you go. This should be it. Let me remove everything. And now with this, we should be able to trigger some haptics feedback when we grab an object. That is awesome. So let's test how this works by going back to Unity. Okay, so if we go back to Unity and that we click on our cube, as you can see, we have the parameters for our haptic feedback over there. Already we can drag the grab interactable on the grab interactable parameters. We can set the duration, the amplitude, and the frequency. But what I can do is actually make this a bit easier to set up in the inspector. If we go back to the script, we can actually go at the top and write range 0 to 2.5 for the duration, range 0.1 for the amplitude, and range 0.1 for the frequency as well, because now if we go back to Unity once again, as you can see, instead of numbers, once it compiles, we will have beautiful sliders to set up the haptic feedbacks. So for the duration, let's write 0.1. For the amplitude, we can say something like 0.7. And for the frequency, we can do, for something like, 0.8. Now, of course, the amplitude is the intensity of the signal and the frequency is the frequency of the vibration. So if I just draw something here, as you can see, if we increase here the amplitude on this wave, we will get something like this. There you go. But if we increase not the amplitude, but the frequency, we will get something like this, right? So these are the two differences. The amplitude is the height of the wave, and the frequency is how many waves there are. Okay, so anyway, now let's test this, if this works. I have my Oculus Quest 3 ready, which is plugged with the Oculus Link. And now I just need to click on play to find out if this works. And already haptic feedback is working. I can vibrate the controllers when I grab here this little cube. And already you can have some fun and change here the different settings on this component with a higher duration, for example, a higher amplitude, to tweak a bit what you want the feedback to be. Okay, so this sums up the first method to trigger some haptic feedbacks with the Unity Meta SDK. So let me show you now the second method, which is using the Meta Haptic Studio. Okay, so first thing first, if you want to use the Meta Haptic Studio, we need to download it, and to do so, you can use the two links that you can find. One is to download it for Windows and the other for Mac. You can find these two links in the description down below. But anyway, for my case, I will download it for Windows by clicking here on download. I have read and agreed to the terms of the license, so let's click on download. Okay, so as you can see, now the Meta Haptic Studio has been downloaded and we can simply unzip it. Once it is decompressed, we can double click and here double click on the Meta Haptic Studio desktop Windows executable to install it. Okay, and here you go. This is what you should see once everything is installed. The mighty Meta Haptic Studio. As you can see, it is looking super nice. So by default, as you can see, we can create some new project to create some new haptics for our game. There is also a tab here for learning if you want to learn more about how it is working. And we have some example project that we can see over there. So for example, let's click on the footstep. And you should be able to see here a bunch of stuff that I will be able to explain a bit better in a few minutes. But anyway, now if you go back to project, what we need is actually to link our Quest headset to the Meta Haptic Studio, because as you can see right now, it is not the case. We are not connected, so we can click over there. Then on Open Meta Store, it should open the Meta Store to download actually the Meta Haptic Studio companion application. So you need to have one application on your PC and the other on your headset. Now, anyway, you can install it and then click on Launch on Meta Quest 3. Okay, so as you can see right now, I'm inside my Quest headset and within the Meta Haptic Studio application for the Quest. Now, the first thing we need to do is to connect to a PC. As you can see, I can see mine because I am connected to the same Wi-Fi. Now, I need to click on Connect. Beautiful. Normally, it should ask you for a certain PIN code over there, which will be given to you by the desktop application. But on my case, everything seems to be good. Already, what you can do is go to the Try Haptic Samples, and you should see a bunch of haptic examples that you can already try. For example, the Cat Pure one is awesome. And you will be able to feel the audio also on your controller vibrating. This is so cool. But anyway, now let's go back to the desktop application, because this is where we will be able to create the haptics. Okay, so now let's create some haptics within here, the Meta Haptic Studio desktop application that we will be able to try. So as you can see, we can see that my Quest is connected. Now, by the way, make sure here that for the next part of this tutorial, that here the HMD sleep mode on is off. This means that your Quest will not go in sleep mode automatically, which is a bit easier to test. And anyway, now let's create a new project. Now, when creating a new project, as you can see, it will ask you to open some audio file. Now, in my case, I have these 3 audio files. So I'm going to select them all and click on Open. Beautiful. And as you can see already, the Meta Haptic Studio has opened everything for us. It has created some haptics for all of our audio. Okay, and these are the 3 audio that I want to use to create some haptics. The first one is an electric box open. The second one is a toilet flush. And finally, a swoosh. And now, as you can see, by opening the 3 audio inside the Meta Haptic Studio, we already have some haptics for each one of them. But as you can see, Meta has done a lot of things to allow us to manipulate all of these haptics. The first thing is here on the right side. As you can see, we can change the gain of the amplitude. We can also change the resolution. For the frequency, it is a bit the same. We can tweak the frequency range over there. So the way it converts the audio to the haptic feedbacks with these 2 parameters. By the way, I have not explained this to you already, but here the blue one is the amplitude of the haptics. And here, if I click over there, we can see here now the frequency, which is this. So it is a bit the same as we saw earlier. We have 2 things that can set up our vibration, for the amplitude and then the frequency. But as you can see on the right side, we have also another one. And this other one is this kind of bar, which is the emphasis, which is basically a quick trigger impulse, which will be very short and that you can manipulate as well over there. So you can, for example, populate more of them, like the second one right there. And you can change some setting over them. Beautiful. So these are the global things that we can do here on the conversion between the audio and the trigger haptics. But you can also change each breakpoint of the haptics. For example, I can grab here this little point and move it all around. And what you can do is also a rectangular selection. So I can select everything right there and move everything up or down. I can also scale it up a little bit, which is super handy. And this is how you can change all of the audio. Now, I will not go too much in depth with the different controls that you can do. If you want more information about all of this, I will link in the description the documentation from Meta. Now, anyway, what I can do in my case is save here this project, which I will call Meta Haptic Test. There you go. As you can see now, the name has been updated. But the main question is now, how can we test here all of these changes that we are applying on this wave? And the answer is with the Meta Quest companion app. Because as you can see, if I put my Quest back, I can see here the current project already linked. And if I click on it, I can see all of the audio that I've added. And I can feel everything on the controller, which is really cool. And there it is. So this is how you can create some audio on here, the application, and that you can test them right away with the companion app on the Quest. And everything is pretty straightforward and it works really amazing. But of course, now one question remains, and it is how we can use them inside our own Unity project. Okay, so to answer this question, you will see it is very simple. We are first going to export one of these haptics. Let's do the swoosh one and click on export. There you go. We need here to select the haptic format, not the waveform. And I will call it swoosh. There we go. We can save it anywhere we want. And then we can simply drag it inside our Unity project in the project folder. And as you can see, we can see it right there, the swoosh 5 haptic that we just created and edited in the Meta Haptic Studio. Okay, and now that this haptic is inside our Unity project, how can we use it? And the answer is that we need here to have this Meta Haptic SDK from the asset store. Now you can click on add to my asset and try to import it in your project. But by default, if you are using like me the Meta All-in-One SDK, if we go to Windows, Package Manager, in Project, in my case I've downloaded the Meta All-in-One SDK, which actually contain here the Meta Haptic SDK, as you can see. So I have no need to actually download this Meta Haptic SDK anymore because it is already done by default. So this means that we can already use this haptic right away. So let me show you how we can do this. We are going to go back to our cube here by selecting it and double click on it. And I'm going to edit the script to also be able to play an haptic clip if we have any. And if we don't, keep playing the default method, which is the one that we created earlier. Now anyway, at the top, let's write using oculus.haptics. Beautiful. And I'm going to add at the top a new parameters called public haptic clip called haptic clip. There you go. Now down below, I'm going to create a private haptic clip player called clip player. And what we need to do is at the start, we need to initialize this clip player with new haptic clip player and give it as a parameter the haptic clip. So this will basically change the data from the haptic clip into a haptic vibration that we can trigger. And anyway, let me update here the trigger haptics function to be able to play the haptic clips if we have any. So let's do if haptic clip. So if we have an haptic clip, what we can do is if the controller is equals to OVRInput.controller to our touch. So if the controller is the right end, what we can do is call the clip player.play. And here as an input, do oculus.haptics.controllers.write. Beautiful. Now else if the controllers is equals to OVRInput.lTouch. So if this is the left end, what we want is to do clip player.play and this time call the oculus.haptics.controllers.left. Beautiful. And let's not forget here to call else start coroutine, which means that if we have an haptic clip, we will play the haptic clip, but if we don't, we will still play the trigger haptics routine from earlier with the simple method. And just like this, everything should be ready. Let's save and go back to Unity. And there you go. We can see our haptic clip parameter over there, and we can drag here our haptics over there, and everything should work. With all that set up, we are now able to turn an audio clip into an haptic clips on the Meta Haptic Studio and to use it inside our Unity project when we grab the cube, but only one way to find out, and it is to click on play. And there you go. It is a bit hard for me to show you this, of course, because this is not kind of visible, but anyway, the swoosh haptic that we made earlier within the Meta Haptic Studio is working and playing when I am grabbing here this cube, and this works for both ends, so everything is now working. We have correctly succeeded to create some custom advanced haptic feedbacks for our game. And there it is, this is how you can create awesome haptic feedbacks for the Meta SDK in 2 ways. As you can see, there is so much potential with this to make your game feel better. And I hope this tutorial will help you to do so. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. A big shout out to my new Patreon, which will appear on the screen. And if like them, you want to get access to the source code of this project and exclusive content, join us, the link is in the description. Thank you for watching, see you soon, bye bye.